Madam President.
Mr. Mahalski.
I move the Board of Trustees approves the Legislative Priorities Advisory Committee to discuss, review, and develop Katy Independent School District legislative priorities and names the advisory committee chairperson as Henry Dibrell and names George Scott as an additional member.
One thing in this I would like to insert is where we will hold an open forum, a public meeting, a town hall, where we can actually hear from the public and have some discussion with them. Not necessarily discussion, but clarify the questions of what they're asking. So we can bring back a proper report to this board as what's the desires of our community. Because remember, we work for them. So before we go out there and advocate, I would like to add that. I'm asking the board to move ahead and approve these. This committee has worked extremely hard, some extremely passionate hours put together to come up with this. And I would also ask the board a couple of things. That we allow this committee to stay together at least through the legislative session so that they will be able to go out and visit some of our legislators to move this agenda forward. And one thing I think that as Katy ISD that we should lead. We always talk about we're a leader. This past week at the TASB board meeting, I had conversations with people from Cy-Fair as well as Fort Bend, and those board members were interested in coming together and putting together a joint legislative agenda from all of our districts. Just those three districts alone, Katy ISD, Cy-Fair, and Fort Bend, would represent 250,000 young people. So I would ask permission of the board to continue to reach out to them and begin to pull some of those districts together.
Did Mr. Dibrell conduct meetings with other school districts and others as part of developing the resolutions that we're about to read in this building?
Madam President?
Mr. Dibrell.
Let me speak to that, because I hear the angst or the hostility in your voice there, Mr. Scott.
Madam President, I have asked you for a point of order ruling, and I've asked you a direct question. You said you put this on the agenda, and I am asking you if Mr. Dibrell or any other member of this board participated in discussions with other school districts in the preparation of these 4 resolutions.
I yield the floor to Mr. Dibrell to answer the question that you're asking about Mr. Dibrell, and I'm not going to speak for him. I'll let him speak for himself.
The genesis of these projects, Mr. Scott, or these resolutions and the One Voice came in a conversation I had at one of our mandatory trainings at Region 4 with a board member from Cy-Fair. I began to discuss with him our legislative priorities that were formed here in Katy, and he began to tell me of the priorities they formed in Cy-Fair. That conversation led to the fact that many of our state representatives, many of our state senators will tell us that can your school districts come into an agreement because many of their districts cover more than one district. Mike Schofield covers both Katy and Cy-Fair. John Zerwas, both Katy and Fort Bend. And from that, we began to talk about, can we find a way to come up into an agreement on 2 or 3 of things that we already agree upon, things that are already similar, and we speak with just one voice to our legislators. So from that, on my personal dime, I met with, I called friends from other districts, and I met with them, and we each brought our legislative priorities to the table. And from that, we noticed that 3 of these were very similar. And those are the 3 that we're moving forward on. The ones that we're bringing to the board, tonight are legislative priorities that were already agreed upon, that you worked on as part of the committee. And what I'm asking the board is to move forward so that we, along with Cy-Fair, Fort Bend, A-Leaf, Spring Branch, Lumberdated, representing over 400,000 young people, can speak to our legislators across their district lines and say, these are 3 things we agree upon. That's the genesis of this. As a member of this board, you have the right to vote for it or vote against it. We're having a discussion about that right now.